More than half of the planet's population lives in cities, and not all of them have the appearance we are accustomed to. Today, I will show you cities whose existence is hard to believe. And we will start with an unusual settlement. Before you is the narrowest city in the world. These shots, which show the city from a bird's eye view, quickly went viral on the internet. Some even thought it was computer graphics. People are scratching their heads. Why would anyone want to live in such a narrow population center when there are much more suitable places in China? Well, why not live in such an atmospheric place that seems to have come out of some kind of fantasy? The city cannot grow in breadth, the mountains are in the way. The narrowest part of Yangtze is only 30 meters wide, while the widest part of the city is about 300 meters. In addition to extreme usacity, the city has one more feature. Since land is a valuable commodity, this area has a large proportion of apartment buildings located right on the river bank. They are built on tall, thin piles to protect people's homes from possible flooding if the water level rises. The city is located between the steep mountains of the Chinese province of Yunnan, and about 40,000 people live here. Infrastructure has been developed, and roads built through it to kilometers tunnel dug in the mountains support life in the city. Tourists also contribute to the city's economy by coming here to see in person these unrealistic views that seem to be from a parallel universe. Although until recently there were not so many tourists, promotion on the internet has improved the situation. It's strange, but there are few bridges here, although it's hard to think of a city that needs them more. The climate here is mild, there is no cold winter. It is warm almost all year round, and it rains often. Thanks to this, many locals earn money by growing rice. The remaining residents work on the railway or are engaged in servicing the tourism industry. Nevertheless, the city cannot be called prosperous, all because of its inaccessibility, despite the presence of a railway. In addition, new permanent residents almost never move here, not understanding why they should live in such a cramped place, and even dangerous due to frequent floods. People died here because of them. During a flood, the river rises so high that it can flood not only the lower floors. At the same time, the piles on which the houses stand not only cannot be saved, but can also collapse. The indigenous people don't even think about leaving here. Their ancestors lived in these places hundreds of years ago. Definitely atmospheric. The views here are amazing. I would like to hope that this place will not be abandoned over time. But there really is an underground city in which people live. It's called Coober Pedy, located in the center of the Australian desert. It is also the opal capital of the world. Here, 30% of the world's deposits of these stones and 97% of all world opal mining occurs. Here, the entire infrastructure of the city is buried in the ground. These are hotels, shops, houses, schools, 3 churches, museums, bars, restaurants, libraries, and everything else. There is even an underground cemetery. All this is located at a depth under several meters of the earth, and sometimes under tens of meters. The fact is that on the surface of the desert is hellishly hot, up to 45 degrees. And before there were no air conditioners, it was impossible to cool the house. And therefore the decision was made to build the city underground. And all for the sake of opal mining. The result was a city like in films about the apocalypse. Even today, city residents prefer to go up to the hot surface as little as possible. By the way, the name Coober Pedy translates to white man's slave. The houses of the city residents are large caves consisting of a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and 4 bedrooms. People tried to dig their houses in such a way that the exit was not only to the street, but also to a many-kilometer mine where mining was taking place. Underground houses always remain relatively cool, with a constant temperature of 23 degrees, while in houses on the surface it can reach up to 40. And these houses are equipped with all means of comfort, sewerage, electricity, running water, and the internet. There are even houses with underground swimming pools. The only disadvantage of underground houses is the lack of windows, with the exception of those houses built on slopes. It is not surprising that films are often shot against the backdrop of this city. For example, Mad Max 3 and Black Hole about Hrithik were filmed here. There are also often spectacular sandstorms here. There is an assumption that the colonization of Mars will be carried out in the same way as the Construction of Cooper PD. They even plan to conduct an exercise here before flying to the Red Planet. Electricity in this city is produced by solar panels, but here it is extremely cheap, because this is a desert with a constantly shining sun. Another funny thing, if you buy that plot of land in order to dig a house for yourself, you might accidentally get rich. For example, when they were drilling for a hotel, opals worth $360,000 were found. The city's population is small, only a couple of thousand people. More recently, foreign structures have begun to appear in Cooper PD, thanks to air conditioners for this. However, most residents spend most of their time underground. This unusual place attracts tourists from all over the world, because its economy is strongly tied to this, and tourism has even begun to bring in as much money as opal mining. The town of Setenil de las Batagas in Spain is very similar to Cooper PD, which is cut into a rock, which looks very impressive, somewhat reminiscent of the city on the mountain from the Power of the Rings. The roof and walls of the houses are basalt rock, on the slope of which the village is located. Let's move on to the next unusual city. In front of you is El Amadia, a city that looks like it was drawn in Photoshop. The old city, built at a time when heights were of strategic importance. Madina is located at an altitude of 1,400 meters. Although living in houses on the edge of a cliff can be scary, their windows offer stunning views of the valley. The city was founded already in the 3rd millennium BC. Since then, it has not grown at all in size. For obvious reasons, there is simply nowhere to grow. The building does not have levitation, and because it was thousands of years ago, kilometers long, 500 meters wide, it remains the same. For a long time, access to the town was possible only through a narrow staircase carved in stone. Now a good road has been built. The city was conceived as an impregnable fortress. Therefore, different peoples and states of the region have always tried to take possession of this excellent stronghold and multi-regional city. Muslims get along well with Christians here. The population is about 8-11,000 people. There is everything you need for a normal life: shops, restaurants, police, and other services. However, due to the impossibility of population growth, territories are limited, which do not allow the construction of new houses. Indigenous people are often forced to move out of the city. Mostly locals make money from agriculture and a little from tourism. Residents of El Amadia are trying to register the city on the UNESCO World Heritage Register in order to attract more tourists. Let's move on to the next unusual city on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. Here, not far from Lagos, there once was a tiny fishing village, and now it is part of Lagos, although it is actually an entire separate city, built on embankments of compressed garbage. The houses stand on stilts directly above the water, one of the most unusual places in the world with extreme poverty. The world's largest slum built on water. This is the crown for me. The picture looks like something from the post-apocalypse. No one knows exactly how many residents there are. Some say hundreds of thousands, others believe much more. The official census put the number at 250,000, but many believe these numbers were an underestimate. Get the scale of the problem. People who encounter this place for the first time involuntarily have a question: how do the local residents manage to survive? After all, there is nowhere to grow food, no trees, nowhere to collect brushwood. Life is really very hard. These people survive in almost unsuitable conditions. The birth rate here is very high. One man can have 3 or 4 wives from each. He has children, 5 to 7 children from only one woman. The country is very rich in natural resources, but these natural resources are more profitable to sell abroad. They pay more for them than the locals. Poor population, wealth of places. There are almost no people sharing here. This is how Gas, the capital of Nigeria, came into being. It is one of the fastest growing megacities in the world. It also occupies a leading position in terms of the size of slums. These slums have their own name, Makoko. They officially call them Black Venice. The minimum number of teachers and police officers per capita makes the Nigerian slums a completely unenviable place. There is no need to even talk about the level of medical care. Add here the terrible, unsanitary conditions. Perhaps then you will understand why there is very little here. Old people. If you look closely, there are almost no elderly people in the country. The vast majority of people die at a relatively young age. Many are due to high viruses, human immunodeficiency. Others are due to malaria, hepatitis, meningitis, typhoid fever, intestinal infections, and so on. All this does not receive proper treatment and leads to the fact that only 5% of the population in slums survives to 60 years of age. Once upon a time, there was a small fishing village here. She supplied the whole of Slegos with seafood. But now the water off the coast is heavily polluted and is no longer suitable for fishing. However, if you sail further away from the city, you can catch some fish if you're lucky. And therefore fishing is the main occupation of residents of water slums. The rest swim every day. The moisture from the water here gives off a foul odor. A thick layer of sewage accumulates around the piles of hundreds of illegal shacks. According to statistics, on average 6 to 10 people live in each of the floating houses. Migrant workers flock here from all over West Africa. Many residents here do not even own, but only rent houses. Wooden boats remain the main means of transportation for local residents. Every family here has them, and children come up with even more interesting means of transportation. Also used for fishing and serving as retail outlets where women sell food, water, and household goods. There are even floating schools built from plastic barrels. Sometimes they are destroyed by storms. Children in some areas are left without new knowledge for several years. And some parents can afford to send their children to neighboring areas, to other overcrowded floating schools. The government does not provide free water to Mako residents. The only way to get drinking water is to buy it from sellers who get it from wells. All waste and sewage is discharged directly into the ocean, and then the kids splash in this water. However, even in such a place, people try to somehow have fun. In homes where there is electricity, you can find an LCD TV and even a new generation PlayStation to console. At least, new for them. There are hairdressers and even a small cafe. And these slums also have one big advantage. It is quite low crime compared to the rest. Also, there are no fees for utilities because these services simply do not exist. Many times, the Nigerian authorities demolish these slums, citing the environmental threat they create. But in return, the government did not offer the residents houses on land. And therefore, when the demolition began, the residents rebelled, which is why the authorities retreated. Terrible unemployment means that even children here are taught hard work from an early age. Almost a third of Nigerians are not literate. Only a few lucky ones have the will to save up money for a one-way ticket to Europe, where, working in the lowest paid jobs, they will earn many times more than at home. The 10-kilometer bridge in the background makes this place even more spectacular, and modern buildings in the distance create a truly realistic picture. Next, we have another Chinese city, Chongqing. This is the largest metropolis in the world, about which, as they joke on the internet, no one knows more than the truth in this joke. Despite its status as the largest populated area on the planet, almost no one outside China actually knows about it, although you've probably seen footage from it. For example, these ones, where trains run through the city building. These shots became very popular on the internet. It also has one of the most complex transport interchanges in the world. The city is growing at an indecent rate. The pace of construction is off the charts. The city's agglomeration is the size of the whole of Austria. Everything old here is quickly demolished, and new things are built at incredible speed. Entire old neighborhoods here can disappear in one day thanks to a huge network of multi-level roads and countless skyscrapers from the future. In these cities of the future, the Chinese are building them right now. In Chongqing, there are doors of different colors, and the border between them is often clearly visible. There are an indecent number of grandiose bridges on these rivers, including the world's longest arch bridge. In another city, they would become its main attraction, but here you might not even notice them against the background of everything else. Chongqing subways are a different story. There are more than 200 stations in this city. One of them, as I already mentioned, is located in a residential building, occupies the 6th to 8th floors. Monorail trains go right through this building. At the same time, there is no discomfort for the residents of the house, since noise suppression materials were used during the construction of the station. Such a cyberpunk station was built due to an acute lack of space in a densely populated part of the city. Due to the lack of space, this city is home to even more cyberpunk parking lots. Remember in the movie Fast and Furious 3, Tokyo Drift? Was there a cool parking station? So here, it is implemented even cooler. How about this? For example, the driver drives onto a platform and leaves the car, after which the platform with the car is raised to a certain angle and moves to the side. But in 2019, a smart parking tower for 397 cars appeared. There you can park your car in just a minute by scanning the QR code. The roads here are also made wisely. Despite one of the most complex transport interchanges in the world, consisting of 20 overpasses located on 5 levels, you will not have problems choosing the right direction. And if you get lost, you can return back, driving a maximum of 1 kilometer until you find the right turn. The number of residents in Chongqing is beyond all standards of decency, as many as 32 million people officially. But this is according to the 2009 census. Population estimates have since risen to 40 million. This is more than the entire population of Canada. Life abounds. The same cannot be said about the next city called Colma, which is located in the USA near San Francisco. This is one of the most unusual cities in the world. 73% of the city's territory is a cemetery. For every 1,000 dead people, there is 1 living person. This is not an exaggeration. Everywhere you look, there are graves. For this reason, this city is also called the City of the Dead. Everything is covered with slabs. In total, 1.5 million people are buried here. But this city is quiet and peaceful. Therefore, another name for this city is the City of Silence. A huge number of dead. The explanation here is quite simple. The fact is that it is too expensive to store people in San Francisco, and therefore the authorities forbade it, which is why 100 years ago, 150,000 people from San Francisco's cemeteries were transported and reburied here. Since then, many of San Francisco's dead have been buried here. The place is quite cinematic, so various films were filmed here. Today, the city has 1,500 surface residents and 1.5 million underground.